All right, well, welcome everyone. This is pretty exciting. This is our first in-person event for a little while, but it's our first hybrid event. So we have multiple cameras here. We've got a room full of about 25 people here. We're at AirTree's office in Surrey Hills, Sydney. And welcome to the audience online, joining us on YouTube. Before we start, I have the clicker. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land at which we're meeting, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So that's important. Now, there's a few familiar faces, a few people I haven't seen for a long time. So welcome everyone in the room. There's a few new faces. Who has not been to an Innovation Bay event before? All right, welcome along. Little bit about Innovation Bay. We are the longest running community for, actually, Alison, maybe you can manage the slides because I think we're both trying to do it. We're the longest running community for tech startups in Australia. We've been going since 2002, which is a hell of a long time. And our job is to help startups. We believe in founders, we believe in the startup ecosystem, we are very passionate about it. And we talk about helping startups from idea to IPO and beyond. So across the whole ecosystem is what we try and do. I'm your host, Ian Gardner. Probably should have said that before. I'm a co-founder at Innovation Bay, so I started it a long time ago. That's how old I am. I'm also a venture capitalist. I'm an investment partner with Xailient Ventures. Also, a quick call out to the Innovation Bay team who are probably listening. Faden Stow is my co-founder in Hobart. Claire's here. Sam is not here, but she's in Melbourne. CJ is in Byron. Alison is here, and Anna is here somewhere. Where's Anna gone? She's upstairs welcoming people. So anyway, thank you for all of them. What else can we say about it? We've got two jobs. We have, like the rest of the world, we are recruiting. So we've got a couple of new membership groups that we're rolling out. So we've got one called Summit, which is for later stage startup founders to help each other. It's been a great group. We've got 35 members, and we're recruiting someone full-time to help run that program. So if you're interested in that, and there's another one that we're launching later this year called Canopy, and that's going to be for earlier stage startups. So, you know, Summit is kind of for startups that have done a kind of Series A, so are you worth 20 million bucks or more? Canopy is going to be for the sort of $5 to $20 million area, and it's to help each other. Being a startup founder is pretty bloody hard, so the best people to help you are other startup founders. So we bring you together, we help you network, and you help each other solve problems. We could not do this without our sponsors, so thank you to them. In no particular order: Macquarie Bank, IAG Farmark Ventures, KPMG, and AWS. And we'll hear a little more from AWS because this is a topic close to their heart. Thank you also to AirTree. My friend James here is our host, and I know a lot of the guys. We've co-invested with them. They're great players in the ecosystem and really good people. Particular call out to Mel. Mel got up at 5:30 a.m. and helped us come in and set up. And apparently Mel is not a morning person, so appreciate it, Mel.
Really not.
This is our first hybrid session. We are going to be doing this regularly, so this will be the new format. So part in person, part online. For any of you that joined us last year, we did this pretty much weekly on a Wednesday morning. It became a little much, I think Claire would probably admit. We did 26 of them in a row, but we loved it because, you know, I did it all from my living room without all this palaver of a setup, but I'd much rather do it with people, so it's a lot more fun. Right, before we start, we are going to play a quick video from AWS because, as I said, AI is a topic that is close to their heart and our heart. So I will let Alison pull up the video once she gets a connection. In fact, before we, maybe once we were just pulling that up, we'll just do a little bit of a context to the session this morning. So we're here to talk about AI. We did a startup event in New Zealand where AI meant artificial insemination. That is not what we're talking about today. This is artificial intelligence, because they kept talking about AI and it didn't make sense when it was about cows. But for many of us, it shapes the lives that we're living in and the way we're working. It personalizes your social media feed, your shopping recommendations. your Netflix recommendations, a whole bunch of things that's going into that. What else? Yeah, how much you're paying for an Uber, banking activity and fraud. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are happening in that. So we're going to get into a lot of that this morning. We've assembled a fantastic panel that I'm really excited to talk to. Data 61, which is CSIRO's group, has estimated that AI could be worth $22 trillion to the global economy by 2030, which is a pretty big number. Are we ready to go with the video? All right, let's hear from Dave.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Lenfers from AWS. I spend a lot of my time working with startups on AI, and as such, I get to see the diverse set of ways AI is used. I'm keeping an eye out on a number of trends over the next few years, and here are my top 5. The first is big data science. Data has always been an important part of the data science process, but we always haven't had the tools to process large amounts of data. With new emerging data warehouse and data lake technologies, we're going to start to see better support for streaming large amounts of data into upstream AI models. I think this is a trend that is fundamentally going to change the way we use data in building AI and ML systems. The second is ops. Ops is something that we haven't really had to deal with for the first generation of ML systems. But as more and more systems are making their way to production, operations around how we deal with data, train and deploy models, and support those models in production are becoming incredibly important. As we see more analytical support for ML ops, and we see more automation for data ops and model ops, we will start to see operations become an emerging trend in AI systems design and development. The third trend are sensors. Traditionally, we see IoT sensors as the major emitter of data in AI ML systems, but we're starting to see a trend where a lot more of these sensors are software-based. I think this is a really exciting trend, and what we will start to see is more of this time series data flowing into our data warehouses and data lakes. I think the types of models and the types of insights we will get as systems start to emit more data, both at the hardware and software level, is incredibly exciting. Fourth trend are graphs. Graphs are not new to systems development, but they're making a big splash in AI. Graphs are great because they're able to represent complex relationships. When you see AI systems overlaid on top of this, the types of insights they can do in a very efficient way is going to only increase the ROI we see in AI ML systems. And last but not least, leading over lagging indicators. AI and ML is starting to make its way into the traditional analytical tools used by businesses. What we're starting to see is less of the dashboard reporting in terms of what happened last month, and more of the action-based insights that allow organizations to say what will happen next month if we don't do X. I think this is incredibly exciting. For me, the next big trends in AI are both technical and non-technical. As new platforms and capabilities allow us to deal with large data at scale, and we start to see innovative new ways of dealing with AI like graphs, and we start to see sensors such as software and IoT work together, I think it's going to be a really interesting space. I invite everyone to start checking out how AI can affect their businesses and startups especially. Thank you.
To start again. All right, we're back. They're a fantastic group and doing some really good stuff and a lot of products. So AI in particular. So thank you, AWS. All right, let's meet the panel. Before we meet the panel, we are going to take Q&A. The way we're going to do it, just so we're not handing mics around, is use Slido. I'm sure you've all used Slido before. So pull out your browser, sli.do. What's the code again? AI in AUS. I think it's on the screen here, but AI in AUS is what you need for Slido. Let's go from my left first. So James Cameron, not the director of Avatar, but a partner at AirTree Ventures. You've been, how long has that been now, James?
4 years.
4 years,
yeah.
Wow. You were the vice president of Axel in London, investing in early stage and growth stage companies, and you're continuing to do that. You're kind of one of the geekier partners here, so AI is in your wheelhouse. Next, Chelsea Wise. Welcome, Chelsea. Chelsea's from Hyperana, which is a very cool AI startup. That's probably the best way of putting it. It's a portfolio company of AirTree, I believe. You're the marketing director. What else can we say? Award-winning AI-powered analytics platform. You've got a PhD. What's your PhD in?
Marketing and stats.
Cool. Dr. Wise designed and taught courses on marketing analytics and behavioral economics at UTS. So you've been a teacher and an academic, and now you're marketing. That's awesome. So look forward to chatting to you. Lars, next up. Lars Olsen is from Xailient. Xailient is lowering the cost, and I'm sure you'll do a better job of explaining this, Lars, but it lowers the cost and improves the performance of computer vision, and with software optimizing the processing of AI across devices from camera to cloud. So it's kind of like off the cloud, like on-device processing.
On-device.
On-device. So we'll talk about that in a sec, because it's very cool what you're doing. Next up, Rohan Gray. You're from Artesian. You've been there 5 years, I believe, so or thereabouts. And you're responsible for VC investments at Artesian, including in the area of AI. Yeah, and we'll ask about Boab in a second. So that is our panel. So let's stop hearing from me and ask some questions. Now, James, I'm going to start with you with a very broad question, and what is AI? Because, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people that are watching will know, and I know you and I have talked, what's the difference between AI, machine learning, nested if-then statements. So tell us what AI is and what the difference between that and ML is.
It's a good question to throw to the VC on the panel rather than the actual technical operators, but I'll give it a shot, because it's a good question, I think, because a lot of people come through those doors here at AirTree and use those two terms completely interchangeably. And I think that one of the best explanations I've ever had, which is incorrect but still pretty good, is that if you are pitching your VCs, call it AI, and if you're trying to recruit data engineers, call it machine learning. And I think that goes to the heart of it, in the sense that AI is considered sexier to pea-sized brain VCs like us, whereas in actual fact, the concept. And I think the two concepts themselves, one is very, very well defined, very specific. Machine learning is really a field of computer science which deals with allowing programs to improve automatically through experience. And it's quite a restricted and specific domain. And AI is much broader in scope, arguably broader in ambition, but also much, much more nebulous. It's really the science and engineering around trying to replicate via machines what was previously considered only available through human intelligence. And so the two concepts, machine learning is almost a subset, I'd say, of AI. And I think that the most relevant point for people building startups in this space is that really, the way I consider it is that it's AI or it's machine learning until it works, and then it's just software. And I think we're starting to see this play out, because it's very rare that startups will come through those doors now and not have machine learning or some form of, be it neural nets or unsupervised learning, or some form of what would be considered under the broader banner of AI, somewhere under the hood, be it a direct part of the infrastructure or be it a supporting role, doing sales recommendations or something. And so it's almost become a little bit like pitching your SaaS startup as being a SaaS startup, and that being the main thing. It's not. Yeah, or
if you go back 10 years, people talked about mobile strategy.
Yeah,
you never hear that now, because
exactly
everything is mobile strategy. So, but we're not quite there yet. So, anyway, thank you, James. Chelsea, let's hear a little more about Hyperana. So it's been around a few years now. I think 2015 or thereabouts. It was launched 16. So yeah, where's the business at, and how are you seeing the evolution of AI in the world?
So Hyperana, just to give you a few fun facts, we connect the dots of a lot of what was said in the opening address from AWS. So yes, we touch on graphs, we touch on the fact of handling data and then consuming that at the end. So Hyperana plays in the business intelligence space, but specifically in the business intelligence space, like they were talking about the traditional dashboarding. So you consume insights via looking at dashboards. At Hyperana, we think that process is fundamentally broken, because if you think about, you receive a dashboard, in large organizations, even though that dashboard may be a product that the organization has bought, the process to build the dashboard, to build the graphs, is manual. And if you think about, if it's a manual process, that means you're employing people to build those dashboards. Now, there is no qualification that says that you, sir, are an expert designer in dashboard curation, and therefore the consumption of that information is inherently biased by the fact that it was designed by someone. So we're playing in that sort of the automation of the business intelligence and the dashboarding space. That's just a little fun facts about HyperAnna. How are we doing? We're doing really well at the moment. It's been not a struggle, but over the last few years, many organizations, large organizations, they want information, they want it today. But if you come back to any of my old UTS lectures just down the block, statistics is the #1 course, and like undergraduate and postgraduate statistics. So there's already a selection bias. These are individuals that actually want to get the degree. Statistics, or even business statistics, it's the one course that people don't come because they want to. They come because they have to, and they come with the standard of, I just need to pass. So fundamentally, you've got this problem in organizations where people want to be data-driven. They want the information, but the demand for that information and making sense of it it's all mumbo jumbo to me. Again, not people in the audience here. You've selected yourself here because you're interested in technology, innovation, and potentially a lot of data. And when I think of the definition of AI, at the end of the day, I just break it down. It's just problem solving, solving a problem with data, automating a lot of that. And continuing to ingest data and doing that in a way that just hopefully sparks joy and solves problems and adds value to the organization.
And Chelsea, are you enjoying being in the startup world instead of being an academic?
Oh, I love it. I can't go back to, this is the dark side, my academic friends. Yeah, I know one of the questions coming is like, what industries are ripe for disruption? And I think of like the university and teaching. So I used to teach a course for 1,000 students in consumer behavior. So the psychology of making decisions. And I created great content, but I knew that content that was created in partnership with some of my colleagues that might have been in the US at Wharton was world class. But it blew my mind, the fact that someone else down the road at UNSW could be teaching the same content, but there's no economies there. We just kind of teach to our cohort. So in terms of ripe for disruption, there's definitely, places within that. But yeah, no regrets.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
that was the right answer, by the way.
No regrets.
Lars, so you are a startup founder. So Xailient, let's hear a little bit more about that. So I'll just quote to you, because I think I took this from your website. It's flyweight software for IoT smart cameras. So you've been through Antler, you've raised a bit of money. I mean, where are you at? And tell us a bit more about Xailient's customer use case.
Sure. So just to sort of put some context around it, who has a camera at home, like a doorbell cam or security cam? And how many of you have turned off the alerts? All right, so actually you guys are more patient than most consumers. So the problem is that these camera systems are generating way too much information. And it's not the alerts that's the problem, it actually sits way upstream. The camera itself generates far more data than the AI can handle. So you're taking this huge pipe of data and you're squeezing it into whatever your computation capacity is, right? And that typically means some little AI. When you do that, you lose a tremendous amount of the information, and that impacts accuracy, that impacts the robustness. So the whole sort of vision of AI falls apart. So what we do is we provide computer vision for technologists, so companies, for example, that build these home cams or enterprises, that sits on board their IoT device right next to the sensor and takes this huge piece of data, figures out what is important, filters that down, and then forwards only that subset of the visual field. And often that means that you can take your analytic AI from the cloud and squeeze it down with our sort of prioritization filter and put the whole thing on the device itself. So now you don't have to have the backhaul, you don't have the cloud cost. It changes the game in terms of the unit economics of computer vision. So where are we? So we started the company about 20 months ago. My co-founder is also a PhD, so I just have to do the business part of it. He gets to do all the science part of it. And he'd been a neuroscientist. He discovered literally how we as humans do that process. So all animals do exactly the same thing. We process our field of view, we prioritize very, very rapidly, and then the rest of it goes to our visual cortex. So we're teaching computers to do this. He invented the technique. We're commercializing that technique. So we raised money right out of the gate from Antler about 18 months ago. And then again, just at the beginning of COVID, mostly from our inside, just as a defense. So we're a US-based holdco. So we've raised about $2.25 million US. Yeah. And earning some revenues now. So with our current run rate, we've got, we'll probably raise again in about a year. So we're in pretty good shape.
All right, awesome. Congrats as well.
Thanks.
I mean, that's really good progress in a pretty short amount of time. Rohan, let's turn to you. So that you are Artesian. I mean, it's, for those that don't know, it's a pretty big, active investor. You've recently launched Boab, so maybe we should hear a little bit about Boab. It's basically an accelerator for AI businesses. So what is it, and do we really need another accelerator?
Yeah, correct. So Boab.ai, we're a scale-up program.
Okay.
We are powered by Artesian, and we've received some funding from LaunchPeak as well. So we're based in Melbourne, and we're looking for AI scale-ups. So what's a scale-up? We want to see AI companies with some product market fit, demonstrated traction, good IP, but really looking to reach that next stage of growth and investment. So companies that come into the program, they receive funding from Artesian. There's no predefined funding terms, so we can co-invest with live rounds, we can set our own terms, and then once the 6-month program begins, it's a bespoke program. So companies can receive consulting from us in regards to product strategy, tech strategy, PR, marketing, and then as well fundraising strategy, because Artesian is investing in each of these scale-ups. So Boab's looking to invest in 32 scale-ups in the artificial intelligence space over the next 4 years. And yeah, it's a great initiative by LaunchPeak because they really want to prioritize.
And is it a cohort-based thing, or is it just a continuous?
There's 2 cohorts each year,
right?
But it's because the program is bespoke itself and its offering, we can kind of keep that, that intake rolling, because it's not necessarily, you come in on day 1 and leave 6 months later for every single startup. It's ongoing.
And do you need to be based in Melbourne?
Yeah, based in Melbourne, but so it's also virtual. I mean, COVID forced our hand. We've done our first 5 investments in the last quarter, and that was all virtual except for 2 Victorian teams, and that was fine. So I think applications have just recently opened, so we're accepting applications from AI scale-ups.
Right, so if there's any AI scale-ups out there, where do they go?
You go onto Boab's website, boabai.com.au.
boabai.com.au.
And apply on there, or reach out to me directly at Artesian.
All right, James, let's jump back to you. So, I mean, I alluded to the fact that Hyperana's a fairly well-known AirTree investment. Who else are you investing in that you can talk about? And maybe just from an investor perspective, how do you think about this class?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I went and looked at our company page on our website, and I could almost every single one of those companies has AI somewhere into the hood, or machine learning specifically somewhere under the hood. So I won't go through the entire list. Hyperana obviously a standout, and one I would put in sort of the category of more generalist applications across industry sectors. We have a few. That's probably a smaller amount overall. Hyperana is definitely there and doing phenomenally well. There's a company called RoboBuy, which is applying machine learning to very large companies who have procurement teams that are buying services and goods and things all across the world, and are just getting invoices coming in from every direction. It ingests all of them and identifies where they've got overlaps, where you can save money, where you can sort of cut that back down on expenses, and it can apply for any sector. So it's got companies, large FMCG companies, it's got large banks, it's got all sorts of things. So that's another one I put in the generalist. There's a company called Thematic out in New Zealand, if there are any Kiwis online, doing fantastic things in natural language processing. Again, for companies across all sorts of different sectors. But I think there's those categories. And then there's the sort of more specific industry-focused areas that I think, for us at least, have been a real strong area of investments. We've got companies who are doing AI specifically for mining, for mineral discovery, a company called Earth.ai based here in Australia. We've got companies who are specifically doing it for industrials and oil and gas, a company called Abyss that we recently announced that does ingests computer vision for oil and gas rigs to identify areas where you need to do maintenance. And it's an incredibly risky and complicated job that they are taking out of the arms of humans now. Other areas like construction, we've got a company called Drone Deploy, which it's a software that sits on the drones, flies above construction sites and identifies areas where you're falling behind in your construction, or areas where you need maintenance or remedial work. So there's a lot of very specific ones in that. So that's, I think, of the third bucket. And the second bucket. Third bucket is just companies that don't have AI in their core product offering to companies, but have it all the way throughout the organization. You look at companies like Canva. Canva has one of the biggest machine learning teams in the country, and it's designed to do things like recommendations and image next best search for images, things like that, that really power a lot of the consumer experience they've got. Other companies like Cloud Guru and Go1 are both in EdTech. They do the same thing, but for identify courses that you might want to take after you've taken the first one. So they're the three buckets. And I think of all those threes, we're interested in all those threes, and it goes back to what we're saying. It's very rare that companies come in and they don't have some sort of machine learning under the hood. So it's almost taken as moot. But what is important to us is you are out there solving a problem. Chelsea, to what you said, you are sparking joy. You are fixing someone's problem, and you have an insight into what that problem is and how to go about fixing it. That's the important thing, not that you are applying machine learning to that problem.
Yeah. Quick reminder to those in the room and those watching, questions on Slido. So AI in Oz is what you need. Makes my job much easier because you don't have to hear from me all the time. Chelsea, are AI or robots going to steal all of our jobs? I mean, we've all seen WALL-E, the Pixar thing where you live in a spaceship and you don't move because you've got robots doing everything for us. Is that the vision of the future, or should AI be thought of as our friend or foe?
I'm going to give you the boring answer that's not going to get any headlines like Elon Musk to say that we're all doomed, and side with Andrew Ng from Coursera and Google, with the fact that what I see with the clients that are using Hyperana, and as James said, we're like agnostic to industry and function. So we've got use cases with many large customers in finance, marketing teams, sales teams, HR, procurement, whatnot. And 4 or 5 years ago, had they been interested in Hyperana, the first meeting would have been, we're excited about the AI, we're excited about the tech, and that gets you the meeting. So this is more pragmatic advice for anyone or everyone that's going to be in the bucket, because AI, machine learning is going to be in all your products. So that'll get you the meeting because people are excited. But when it comes to the reality, and again, this is really like a cliche, but if you don't have, if you're not solving a problem with the data and again, it's not a cool tech problem to solve, but that actually makes someone's life easier. And by I say easier, like significantly easier. And I can give you a story. So Hyperana started on the concept that dashboards, this manual process it just takes too long. And that then we could speed up the time to insight like significantly quicker. So again, that got us meetings. People really liked the idea that, especially Hyperana, we dabbled in. The first product was heavily on natural language. Just ask a question. And everyone said, sure, I can just ask a question. But then when you're in actual enterprise, or an actual company, and you're thinking like I'm thinking marketing or I'm thinking sales, I'm not just thinking like in my day job, I'm just not standing around just thinking of questions that I can ask, especially derived from my data, particularly because data is a big insecurity for many people, or that sort of thinking like a statistician, thinking like a problem solver, thinking structured problem solving. The best people that I see this are typically the big four consultants, because they're trained in this structured thinking and analytical reasoning. So we thought in the early days that just asking a question was the easy thing, but actually it wasn't. It's being able to provide the insights in such an easy way so people can see in almost if they were pushed these insights to their email addresses, that's what we're finding is significantly easier. So what you think might be the interesting thing for consumers, it actually ends up being completely the opposite.
I might stick in this question because people are worried about jobs disappearing. So, I mean, Lars, is this something you think about? Or like, is your software going to remove jobs or be a net job creator?
Like every wave of technology has this fear, and every time it turns out that we create far more economic activity and far more jobs than we eliminate. Right? And there's really no reason to think this one's going to be any different. AI is not really artificial intelligence, it's ML, right? And it's, we had Excel, and then we had access databases, and then we had big data graphs, and this is very much just one more step. It is not nearly as, oh my God, it's something totally unseen in the history. Like it's just the evolution of how we manage data.
Yeah. Rohan, any comments on jobs?
Yeah, I mean, there's a global consensus that universal basic income could be incoming, a requirement. I think that society as a whole is going to have to prioritize upskilling and learning more than ever before. And there is a chance you could get, moved out of that equation of employment if you don't prioritize upskilling and learning more than ever before.
Yeah.
I think to take a contrary, but I think I'm scared of it. I'm not scared of robots killing me, but the impact of on a lot of jobs in society. When you look at, I think that the difference here is that so much of the automation that's come before has been derived at making typically information workers more efficient in their jobs, and that has created net new jobs in the economy. So much of what we're seeing now is general process automation that is removing whole swathes of jobs at the bottom end of the cycle. When you look at truck drivers in the US, they're the largest single category of jobs,
millions of jobs,
and you would be a fool to bet against those jobs still existing in 15, 20 years time.
So I think though we're looking at the wrong thing, right? You're looking at the very first adopters, the low hanging fruit of applied AI. And you're saying, oh, well, the very first thing we're doing is, one type of economic activity where we're driving efficiency through eliminating jobs, right? And that's happening, right? But the bigger story is the one that's just starting to break, right? It's all these new use cases. It's all these new things that we hadn't imagined before. Right, this is like standing around in 2006 and asking if the iPhone is going to destroy jobs. Right, it's like you have to look past this sort of like short early phase. This is the Luddite period of like, oh, these machines are going to take away our factory jobs. But clearly, automation led to far more new things that were almost unimaginable before the wave crested. Right, and we're in this moment where like you have to see just above that crest. Yep. To see what's going to come.
I agree with that. I think net new jobs 100% will increase over time. But implicit in that assumption is that in order to protect the society from massive upheaval, you're going to be able to train a truck driver to do those new jobs. I don't think that's the case. I think we are sort of lashing over that inconvenient truth that we're going to need a huge amount of upskilling. And I think in many cases it's just not going to be possible for people. So I do think we do need to prepare for something like that. We have to be putting the policies in place to protect those people in our society today as we start to think about rolling these technologies out.
All right, look, let's just a reminder, like Slido is great because you can get to upvote and downvote questions and it makes my life a lot easier. So I might just jump to a Slido question. And it's a little bit linked to what we said. So should companies, I'll just read out, so should companies utilizing AI have some sort of regulation at this stage to prevent any doomsday style scenarios, or is just a false issue? I'm just unpacking that a bit. I mean, we've all seen the movies like Terminator, Skynet, haha, it's pretty funny, but I mean, there is Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking, when he was alive, were pretty concerned about this. There is an existential threat to humanity from computers getting much smarter than us and treating us like crap. Are we worried about that? Are we worried about China? I mean, China is investing hugely in this, and there's definite military applications that we should be concerned of. So who wants to, Lars, I should probably go to you because you're kind of working on the software that could be used against us.
So our internal code of ethics literally includes Asimov's 3 laws, right? So the idea that people are putting technology into automated killbots is, I think, short-sighted, right? Like that has some serious ramifications. I'm not worried about Skynet. I'm way more worried about somebody building like the automatic paperclip maker that just doesn't know when to shut itself off and eats up all of the iron, right? It's like these are not intelligent, right? They're highly automated pattern recognition and pattern applying systems. And so, that's where I think the risk lies. I mean, in terms of regulation, I think the most immediate threat right now is probably in the cybersecurity space, right? And we see a lot of risk with the way information is moving and getting promoted or demoted online and things like that. And there, I think there may be some outcome-based, approaches that we can take where we think about, do companies have obligations around cybersecurity and things like that? Trying to go back to the beginning and say to some, innovator, like you have to imagine every possible outcome and mitigate, all of those kinds of things is, not going to be functional, right? There's no regulatory schema where that would actually work.
Anyone else want to touch on the doomsday scenario? Has anyone read about it, concerned about it?
I think that the world is reasonably used to grappling with these questions around technology used for nefarious purposes. I mean, we are still trying to figure out how to regulate and enforce specifically nuclear weapons on a global scale, and this will be another technology that falls into a bucket of something that we will continue to grapple with how to regulate and how to enforce and how to play global power politics around for many years to come. I think it's just the speed at which killing machines will come to market will increase inevitably, because with technology it always does. So I think it is important to be able to think about 3 steps ahead of this and figure out ways to regulate it and ways to have global consensus on it. I think we're in a bit of a different society in that nuclear technology is not a perfect analogy because it started in weapons and moved to industrial use cases. This is sort of going the opposite way, and a lot of what happens is hard to understand what's going on. When you drop a nuclear bomb on someone, it's pretty bloody obvious. When you start to develop some of these technologies and put them to work in things like cybersecurity attacks, it's very hard to understand what the actual technology is.
I mean, and I'll stick in the cybersecurity, and I might ask you this, Rohan, because I mean, you see state-sponsored actors. I mean, well, not actors, but players. So specifically Russia, China, North Korea. I mean, they've got thousands and thousands of full-time dedicated staff who just want to try and infiltrate and hack networks. Is this a big area that you're focused on at Boab?
Well,
not the hacking. I mean,
not the hacking. We're not hacking yet. But cybersecurity definitely is a massive market, and we've been looking at quite a few cybersecurity opportunities in Australia through Boab and Artesian. I think with the state risk, I mean, China's definitely prioritized AI investment. In 2017, I think they announced to the world they want to be the AI leaders by 2030, and that the world leader in AI 2030 will probably be the world leader in 2100. And I think they're well on track to get into that point. Is it a risk for warfare? I mean, as you mentioned, spying is the new warfare. Cybersecurity is the new warfare. I don't think we'll see hand-to-hand combat, in the next world war. So it's definitely a threat. And China and Russia, etc., are not part of the global partnership for AI, which is a partnership with most of the developed nations globally. It's an intergovernmental agreement to try and prioritize responsible AI for all. And I mean, interestingly enough, those countries or states are not part of that agreement.
Yeah. Chelsea, I might ask you this one. So again, from the online, or it could be in the room, I don't know where this question is coming from, but which functions within a company, so for example, HR, marketing, sales, etc., within an early stage startup are best suited to using AI tools?
Oh, I can't comment on AI tools in general, but in terms of like HyperAnna, many startups come to us and say, can we use you now, like to analyze? We're on board, we want to automate. And I'm like, well, what data do you actually have? And that's the problem for many small companies if they don't have, or startups specifically, they don't have the data looking backwards. So we specialize in, we're talking like 5, 10, 15, 20-year data sets, long-term, longitudinal panel data. We're talking financial records, customer records, call center records, whatever that is. That's our little sweet spot of what we do really well. Time series data and giving insights to people. And again, in terms of even prediction, we're very clear at saying there are certain prediction things that we just don't do because, again, we don't own the data. Our customers own their data and they have the mechanism to upload it and get the insights out of Anna. When people ask me that question about, like, am I nervous about the governance and all of this? It sparks a tiny little bit of joy because the people asking those questions are the people that typically would have said to me, like, I'm not a numbers person, like I'm just a marketer, or I'm in people ops, like this is not me. I know manufacturing really well. So when they ask me the question like, are these insights biased, or where's the bias in your system? It gives me the opportunity to say, well, how would you have made a decision? And they're like, okay, well, I'll look at this system and this system. Most of the time, what they're telling me is that they're making a decision based on incomplete information. And if you're making or selected information, then there's a bias there. So when I kind of talk to them about that problem and they feel insecure that it's based on incomplete information, and then a tool can surface a little bit more information as an input into the decision-making process, that helps alleviate some of their fears about the fact that they're still in control. Because again, our technology, we're not making recommendations to say, do this now. It's really at that early end of like, can we help people consume information, data better and give them more confidence to make an informed decision, rather than just go, where's the gender bias? Where's the bias here? Where's the da-da-da-da-da? So I think asking that question has been a really good opportunity for education, but it's super early days.
All right, Lee, there's a question here that's probably applicable to everyone. So I might start with you, James. It's from David McKeague. David, you should have joined us in the room. I know you're in Sydney, so thanks for the question. Where do you see the emerging AI opportunities? So Lee, we talked about cyber and what HyperAnna is doing, but what is coming? Like, where's the secret sauce that you're seeing as AirTree?
David, I'm glad you asked the question because I grabbed this from my desk on the way. I had to crunch the numbers on this for a presentation I did for the University of Melbourne Analytics Conference last week. And so I wanted to understand, and I promise this is going to be the shittest use of PowerPoint you've ever seen. I've seen some bad uses of PowerPoint, but holding up a piece of paper from your desk.
It's all smudged as well.
It's pretty bad. I'll walk you through it. How about that? We did lift in the ring. We crunched the numbers on where the money in Australia is going into AI-focused startups, which sectors, which areas, and we went back 6 years, about 2014 up until last year, just to identify where they were. Because I had a hunch that some of the industry-specific areas of AI were going to come out with more funding than some of the sort of cross-sector tools for AI and data infrastructure. And I was sort of half right. Number one with an absolute bullet was health. 26% of funding into AI startups. And bear in mind that AI startup funding has gone through the roof in the last year. That last year it was about 250 million US. That was more than twice the 2019, which was again more than twice 2018. So it really is on an exponential growth curve, which is excellent. Best time ever to raise money if you're a AI-focused founder in Australia. Health was number one with a bullet, 26%. Big companies like Harrison AI and Health Match all raising big rounds in the last few years.
Maxwell Plus as well.
Maxwell Plus, and I think there's a good reason for that. Australia, if we think about where are the opportunities for AI founders in Australia, healthcare is an incredible one for a couple of reasons. We have incredible data sets in Australia available for AI founders. We have Medicare data on just about every one of the 26 million, I don't know how many people we've got in Australia. And we've also got, we're one of the few countries that's got centralized data on pharmaceutical use. So they're massive data sets that, applied in the right way, can be huge. We also have a lot of private equity or centrally owned private hospitals and private clinicians, radiology departments, things like that. So you have massive data sets there, which is quite unique in Australia. So I think there's very good, and we've got a long history of great biotech and healthcare startups and technology anyway. So I think there's a lot of groundwork to be done, and that will continue to be a big area. The next biggest, with 15%, is what I would consider sort of the tools and cross-industry. I'd put HyperAnna in that case. I'd put RoboBuy in that category. Tools that will be used for both people within industries, across industries in different functions, marketing, sales, etc., but also tools for data scientists to create these new ML applications. And I think for me, that's a real area of focus because I'm a massive geek and I love that sort of shit. But if you think about the software development lifecycle and all the billion-dollar plus companies that have come out of doing very specific things for the software development lifecycle, from DevOps all the way through to pure operations, through to hosting, you've got the same infrastructure being built by startups across the globe now for data ops and data engineers. And given that just the relative weight and the relative size of software engineers versus data engineers now getting much, much closer to parity, there's so many opportunities, just if you do the maths, for building those data infrastructure and data ops tools. Things like version control, testing, compliance, that sort of thing for data engineers. So a big area. FinTech was next below that, was 13%, largely in things like fraud analytics and credit scoring, things like that. These are great use cases for those. And Australia's got a huge pool of great FinTech talent. And then what you'd expect, industrial, defense, transport, areas where these are probably larger as a proportion of GDP in Australia, mining, than in other countries. So would
it's quite low in e-commerce there. I'm just looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, it's 8%. I'd say that's sort of a third or a fourth runner. My experience in e-commerce in Australia is we're probably 5 to 10 years behind, well, not 10, 5 years behind a place like the UK, which I think is probably at the forefront of that. Anyway, so there are a whole bunch of areas, and Australia always, I think, falls into this trap of trying to think about why we would be better at a particular area than others, and the natural call-outs will always be, we're going to be great at ag tech and mining tech because we've got great industries there, and that is true to an extent. But then you'll see things like Canva that come out of completely left field. No one would have gone back 10 years ago and said Australia is going to produce the dominant SaaS-based graphic design tool. It just happens. It's just idiosyncratic like that. So I'm not saying that these are the only areas to invest in, but I think there's good opportunities for Aussie.
Yeah. Rohan, emerging sectors, like where are you seeing?
I was going to have to agree. I was going to say health tech, fintech. That's what we're seeing a lot of. I think there's a big opportunity for ed tech as well globally. I think really any sector where there's a little bit of consumer distrust or it's mispriced or too expensive, there's always an opportunity for AI to come in there and make things more efficient, more accessible for all users.
Look, while I've got you, I might stick with you. There's two questions that come in from the audience that are linked, so I'll read them out together. So David Warwick in the room and Ryan Bogates, and it's around where is Australia best placed to compete? So do we have any specific competitive advantage? We talked about health tech, and that might be one of them, but what else is coming? And then I'll maybe ask.
Mining tech as well. I mean, we don't like to always prioritize mining in Australia because it's not necessarily environmentally friendly, but there are technologies that can make mining more efficient as well. We are leaders in our clean energy fund at Artesian, deploying energy capital into clean energy opportunities. Hydrogen, I think the next few years as well will be massive. Yeah.
Lars, any thoughts on that? Like, what are you seeing in terms of emerging use cases?
So we focus exclusively on computer vision and at the edge. So people that are deploying, either deploying new sensor systems, new camera sensor systems, or upgrading sort of their dumb cameras to be smart. So there's a lot happening, in process, of course, like anybody that's process intensive. There's a lot happening in security. Some of the more exciting things, I think, are things that are emerging, that are use cases that haven't existed yet. So I think, if the questioner is like a prospective founder or something like that, trying to figure it out, I think look for the interactions of humans with their digital systems that are really awkward today, right? Like, where are you sick of doing this on a 3-inch screen and you want your environment to actually recognize what you're doing while you're doing it and respond appropriately. And those, I think, will be the wave that come. So like right now would be the right time to start that startup.
Yeah. All right, we're into the last sort of 3 or 4 minutes, so let's maybe take a couple more questions. So, but there's one here about GPT-3. So I had to look it up. Does anyone know what GPT-3 is? James is nodding. So I'm going to ask you then. What are your views about this? And first of all, you can explain what it is, and I can give you the Wikipedia entry if you need to look into it. What are its applications, its issues, its threats, its opportunities?
It's a GPT-3 it's an open source project that ingests basically the internet's worth of text and creates net new text based on something that you give it as a startup base. So you could type in a paragraph of, for us, we could start an investment memo for one of our startups, and it will basically fill out the rest based on things that and similar thematics and similar styles that it's found in its enormous database of training.
Just by the way, it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer.
Yeah, and it's one of those those moments where you, like the first time you take an Uber, you're like, holy shit, this is going to change the world. It was one of those moments. If you ever actually get a chance to use it and just throw some training sets in and just see what happens, it sort of takes your breath away. It's one of those moments where you're like, Jesus Christ, we're closer to general AI than I thought. Now, of course, we're not. It's still a hell of a long way to go that, but it is an incredible demonstration of the power of what we can do with unsupervised machine learning.
Anyone else want to touch on that? Lars, have you come across this?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't recognize the name of it, but so there's a fun experiment with this, which is like you sort of start writing a sentence and then you can read like 3 or 4 or 5 more sentences or whatever, and it sort of makes sense, but you can break it super easily. So you can do something like, oh, I picked up 5 forks. I gave 2 forks to Ian. Now I have a pretty bird, right? It's like it has no comprehension. Right, and so I think it's an awesome illustration of both the power and the limitation of these systems. We have to layer on top, right? We have to bring solutions that are software that sit on top of these ML systems. That of course brings bias and trouble of selection and human curation and things like that. But it also inherently limits the threat and the potential of these things. Like we're a long way away from general AI, if such a thing is even philosophically coherent.
Yeah. long way being what, 20, 30 years? Because I mean, it's super intelligence is coming, isn't it? This is
I think all of these things, 5 years ago, we all thought fully automated cars were 10 years away. Does anybody think they're 5 years away right now? Like
Elon Musk.
It's that overnight success 10 years in the making. I think a lot of this stuff is still quite a long way away.
All right, let's move to the last question, and I'm going to get an input from all of you, and we've got 2 minutes, so about 30 seconds each. So Chelsea, let me start with you. So this is tips for, like, the audience is probably wondering how they should be implementing AI if they're not already in their startup. So any tips, like how should they start? How should they be thinking about tools that they could use? 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. Well, number one, startup where you've got no money anyway, so you're forced to be innovative and frugal. And that's your superpower. That's my main advice. Like my marketing team, for instance, there's 2 of us. It forces us to think differently, and it forces us to search for technology and solutions that we can do things better. Not in our portfolio, but there was a company called Descript, and it helps you edit and create amazing videos, like editing a Google form, like the power. You can be like a professional podcaster. But again, I would never have Googled that had I had a team of 100 people.
I thought the answer was going to be hyperana.com.au.
Of course it's not.
Yeah, I'll help you out with that. Rohan, any thoughts on this one? Like, what should startups be doing that are out there?
I think initially, don't come to Boab. We're scaling up your pre-existing artificial intelligence, just to clarify that. I think organize your data set, know your business value, know what you want to achieve, know the difference between AI, ML, and then, get an expert in to see if, you actually can implement with that data set that you've already got. You mentioned it earlier, you need to understand the data sets. That's the value, having a unique data set and optimizing it.
All right. Lars, should they all be signing up to Xailient?
Absolutely, of course, right? We'll help you prioritize your data. I think my bit would be data is not oil, data is sand. The value is in turning it into silicon, right? So the value add is what makes it valuable. It's not inherently valuable.
That's a nice analogy. I like that. James, last word with you. Any thoughts on this one?
Quick. I think focus on the problem. Don't try and cram AI into it. Just make sure that you know what your problem is and you're looking for a solution to solve it. And I think if you are AI as a core startup, don't forget that when you're going through your MVP stage and trying to find product market fit, you can't just focus on tuning your algorithm with real world data. You really do have to test out the entire stack of your startup, including how you're going to deliver it to the users, to really understand whether or not they're going to care about the problem that you're solving. So don't just focus on the algos.
All right, I think we're out of time. I'm just looking over at, Claire's nodding. So yeah, I want to be done by 9. So look, thank you to our panel. I'll call you in a sec. Thanks to you in the audience for coming, and for everyone online, you can give a round of applause. But yeah, James, Chelsea, Lars, Rohan, thank you very much. Awesome.
Thank you.
Let me just do a quick wrap while we do this. So we have applications open. So like Innovation Bay also has investors as part of our community. And they're looking for good deals. So if you are a startup and you're trying to raise money, it's not all about money raising, by the way. We also try and get successful commercial startups too. But we do have a group called Horizon, which is a group of angel investors. So we have applications open to pitch to that amazing group. So I think it's on the screen. What's the URL? bit.ly/pitch Horizon May. So bit.ly pitch Horizon May. And I think bit.ly is case sensitive. So capital P, capital H, capital M. It's a little bit complicated, but check it out. And it'll be on our Twitter feed as well. So check that out. I mentioned this in the opening. We are hiring 2 new roles. Is that on a slide, Anna? Yeah, we do have that. So one for Canopy and one for Summit. So check that out. I think it's going to be on LinkedIn. If we haven't put it up, it's going to be up today. And certainly by the time you're watching this video on demand, it'll be up. So check it out. If it's you, let us know. If it's someone you know, please share it. That'd be amazing. Look, keep your eye on the website. We've got a bunch of stuff coming up. We're going to be at South Start. So now that we're back in person, we are going down to South Start in Adelaide, first week of May. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So check it out. There's a big conference on first, I can't remember the exact dates, but Wednesday's what, the 5th of May? 4th. Wednesday, the 4th of May is the main event. There's a startup showcase Tuesday, the 3rd. So again, if you're looking, I think we've closed applications in that one, so you're too late, but come along and check it out. James, thank you for hosting.
Pleasure.
We have a bunch of food and drink. This doesn't apply to anyone online, but we've got some amazing pastries here. So if you're in the room, please hang around, meet someone you haven't met before, and eat all the pastries, because otherwise AirTree is going to get fat. So we don't want that. And then finally, thank you to our sponsors. We could not do this without them, and I really appreciate it. So KPMG, AWS, IAG, and Macquarie. So Claire, are we good to go? Right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.